Welcome to our podcast. Welcome to our podcast.
It's a great start. We're already off running.
Welcome with the delay. All right. So, what is the name of this episode of On the Playground with Jim Warren?
Oh, you want us to tell you the name?
I believe that it was a combination of the two of you that came up with it.
It was. From players to producers, I believe.
From players to producers. So we are in our 9th month of doing this live stream. So it's taken me 8 swings to do what I should have been doing from the beginning. All of these things should be starting with some song lyrics. The fact that they are not, well, gee, I even blurred Bruce Springsteen in my background. Sorry.
You can allow him if you'd like.
Bruce.
Is that the government?
But these are not lyrics from Bruce Springsteen. What'd you say?
Is the government forcing that to happen? We're not allowed to see Bruce Springsteen anymore?
Yeah, really. He's only on the cover of Time magazine again.
Tom, you can only call it the government. You can only call it the government for a few more hours because it's about to shut down. And then I don't think we can call it the government. If it's not working, we can't call it the government.
The ex-government.
It's the former government.
Here are the lyrics I want us to start off with today. This is a song by a gentleman named David Wilcox, who's a singer-songwriter that I love. And the chorus of this song is, when there's no pretending, then the truth is safe to say. Start with the ending. Get it out of the way. Now there's no defending because no one has to win. Start with the ending. It's the best way to begin. So we're going to start with the ending today.
There you go.
This is the ending. We're going to end with us talking about Shakespeare and about how we got to Shakespeare. But on our way there, this is the 1964 Picasso drawing of Shakespeare. And here's what AI cannot tell you. Here's what AI is lying to you about, listener. When you Google Picasso Shakespeare drawing logo for Shakespeare's Globe in London, AI will tell you there is no evidence that Shakespeare's Globe ever used this drawing.
Really?
When my old company, the Shenandoah Shakespeare Express, that became the American Shakespeare Center, toured to the museum space of the Globe while it was being built, we were there in the early 90s, they were using this drawing as their logo. I have a button somewhere that has this Picasso and Shakespeare's Globe around it, but you cannot find it on the internet, which is just mind-blowing to me because you can find everything on the internet.
I think what's more mind-blowing, as I change the subject on this, Jim, is the fact that Picasso drew that in 1904. Because I always thought Picasso was like Beethoven's age. You know what I mean? Like when you say Picasso in 1964, I'm like, that's not right. He drew Jesus live. Like he drew a caricature of Jesus.
He drew Jesus live. That was good.
Well, here's Picasso in that age don't work for me.
Here's the final point on this. Shakespeare's Globe was using this. The reason that you cannot find any material that confirms that is that pre-internet, in the 1990s, whoever owned this drawing with the Picasso people sued them and said, we don't want you using that for your logo.
Wow.
And so their logo has changed a little bit over time, but they came up with a logo that has the globe itself, a drawing of it, that isn't nearly as interesting. This was so cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
And see, they used it without asking because they thought Picasso was so old that it was in the public domain, right? They had no idea that Picasso. I would have thought he drew that in like 1764 instead of 1964.
Well,
He
and
actually
and
had
having
Shakespeare pose for it.
And Shakespeare posed for it. Right, exactly. It was Jesus
Having-
and then Shakespeare. They were right next to each other.
having gotten the pleasure of meeting Sam Wanamaker and hanging out with him a little bit back then, I'm pretty sure that Sam asked Jesus for permission to use Picasso, and then Sam died. So it all went away.
I certainly can understand Sam's need for prayer, considering how hard it is to get something like this to happen in the world. So we're all asking Jesus, Picasso, and Shakespeare to smile down on us right now to get this thing done.
That is a really, really good point. And I'm clicking background and effects, and I am trying to unclick the blur.
We're working on the unblur.
Appearance, port, light, studio look, framing. Where's the blur?
There it is, the blur. There it
is.
Clarity.
So,
we've all just reached clarity.
And in case listener, viewer, not only do you have the Born to Run album with the folded out because it was split down the middle, but that is a mini replica of Eddie Van Halen's guitar hanging there next to him. So there's your music content for today. We started with the ending, and now let us go back to the beginning.
Well, in a way, this brings us to what our topic for the day is, which is great actors who go on to do other things, like Jeremy Allen White, who is playing Bruce Springsteen in a film right now. Is that a good segue?
Not bad. Not bad. But wouldn't that mean that at least one of us has to be a great actor for that analogy to apply?
I meant grading, like our personalities are not pleasant to watch on the stage. That's more.
Well, yeah, and you've seen Jason quite a bit. Jason hasn't seen your acting yet, Tom.
Lucky him.
Those who can't do produce.
I'm sure that will come up during this conversation. Okay, so this is a question that I sometimes ask our other guests when we bring in outside people for conversations, and I would like to ask it of the three of us. What was your path from birth to becoming a professional actor?
And as I mentioned in our email, I believe Jason leapt forth from the forehead of Zeus, dressed as Falstaff, fully formed. It was an amazing thing. That was his path. Actually, Jim, I think it would be great for you to lead us off on this, because at least in the mythos that's passed down about SSE and the American Shakespeare Center, you pretty much went from actor to producer almost in the same step. So I'd be really curious to hear your story first, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Okay.
Unless you don't want to go first.
I always think that you two are far more interesting than I am. So we'll start low and then build from there. How's that? I think I'm the shortest of us of we three. And I kind of look like Shakespeare and Picasso with, okay. I'm pretty sure that I'm the only one of the three of us who wasn't a theater kid in high school. You two were both theater kids, yes? Jason was a sports guy.
Yeah, for sure.
I got my acting start, and I do have photographic evidence of this, as the angel of the Lord in a Christmas pageant thing for church when I was third grade, I think. But I
what do you have? Jesus was one of my first parts too, Jim. So we're floating around.
Jesus was?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you have a beard early?
No. I was actually.
Wait. Were you in a manger? Was that your first role?
Very early. No, we'll get back to it. It's not my story yet. Jim, please carry on. I will share my divine inspiration at a later date.
Did Picasso draw you?
He did, in the manger. Very special, but I got sued for it, so long story.
My whole life took a different path when I got cut from the freshman football team in high school. And pretty much when I ever tell this story, I say, I am not kidding. Paraplegics don't get cut from freshman football. I mean, and I was too little. I didn't lie about my weight. If I'd have lied about my weight, and if I just would have, I mean, again, nobody gets cut. But that was a huge deal, because that meant that my high school years took on a completely different trajectory. That had I gotten in there, all of my friends were sports dudes, athletes, and basketball players. We all started the summer before freshman year. We were all the same height. They all grew. I did not. So my high school years were taken up with working. I worked a lot, and at a movie theater, and then as a cook. First 2 years was at a movie theater. Second 2 years was as a cook. And I was also big into my non-denominational church's youth group. And so there was a lot of acting stuff that came as being part of this youth group leader, because I was young and stupid and crazy. And, you know, the doing skits when I was a high school person, doing skits for the junior high youth group. You know, my buddy climbs the tree and chews on Oreos and spits down, and I catch it. So I'm pretty sure that my acting never reached a greater level than that. And my clique in high school was a bunch of people who were from a bunch of different cliques. I had athlete friends. I had brainiac friends. I had some theater friends. And the two people that were directing the senior class play were friends of mine who said, "You should audition, Jim." And I said, "I've never acted." They said, "You should audition anyway." And they gave me a big part in The Mouse That Roared. I was the lead in that play that also became a Peter Sellers movie, and that gave me the bug. So I got the bug while I was a senior in high school, and I didn't want to go to college because I didn't want my parents to pay for education, because we had different ideas. I didn't realize that I was on a road to being a hardcore lefty liberal, but my parents were very much righty McRighties, and my father was in the Navy, career Navy person, and they saw college as a place you go for a piece of paper that gets you a job. And I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. So going to college, I didn't want to do it. I took the SATs once, which was the night after I took one of my friends to her prom. And so my score, wasn't great. And I didn't care. I was going to go someplace that I wanted to live in the United States, set up residency, and go to college based on my very low income rather than my parents', Navy middle class income. And I applied to two schools. One was outside of Chicago, the largest non-denominational Christian college, Wheaton College, which is where I really wanted to go, and visited there and loved it there. And I applied to one state school in Virginia. I went to high school in Virginia. My dad was stationed at the Pentagon, so I lived in Northern Virginia. And I applied to James Madison University just to please my parents. And this is a long ass fucking story. I couldn't go to Wheaton. I couldn't go to Wheaton because they made you sign a pledge that said you can't dance, you can't drink, you can't smoke. Not just while you were in session, but your whole time enrolled as a student.
So Footloose University we're talking about here.
I graduated from high school in 1984. It was exactly Footloose. And while I was there visiting, I went to the administrative office and spoke to a dean. And I said, you guys are a non-denominational church. You are not this kind of hardcore. You don't believe that these things are evil. I know this about you. And he said, no, we don't. But they are controversial issues in the body of Christ. Lots of people think they are bad. And therefore, there are so many things that young people have to deal with. We're just going to take these things off the table. And I said, sir, that is exactly the reason I cannot go to your school. If that's what you believe. And on top of that, the students that I met whom I liked, I said, you guys had to sign this pledge. I don't get it. He said, oh, yeah, we all sign it, but we don't follow it. I can't go here. I cannot go here. And so I was planning on picking a place to live. And my mother told me, try it. We'll pay for a year. If you like it, we'll pay for 4 years.
At JMU.
At JMU.
Okay.
And so I went there, and even at that time, I think it's even more so now, first years of college are grades 13, 14, and 15. You take, what they tell you to take, that you have to take all these gen ed classes. And I didn't know if I wanted to be there, so I didn't follow any of those rules. So I took acting, I took poetry, I took criminology, I took things that I just looked at the book and said, this might be interesting. And I remember calling my parents from the bank of phones, because this is payphone time, no internet. And I was on the phone with them in my first semester, because all of my classes started to talk to each other. It was like the perfect higher education in my brain. My brain was being blown by how philosophy related to acting, related to everything just came together. And I'm like, I still don't know what I want to do, but I know that I still want to study acting. And Mom and Dad, I'm crying. I want to stay. And though I want to study theater, I will get a double major in English, and I will get a certificate to teach high school, because I know that the certificate stuff's important to you. So please let me stay.
Jason, you might not realize it, but Jim was just acting there. It was very, it was so honest and truthful. And why is English the chosen fallback for theater people? Like, what? No,
well,
that's better. I did the same thing. It's like
that's part of the story that got me to Shakespeare.
Ooh, tell.
Because I wasn't a big Shakespeare nut in high school. I had a great teacher my senior year who was the best actor ever, because she told me that she was going to retire the year before, but she had my older brother in her class. And she said, I put off retiring for a year because I knew another Warren was coming through. And so I stayed for you, Jim.
Kind of hard.
And I met at James Madison the Shakespeare guy there, Ralph Allen Cohen. And I didn't meet him in Shakespeare class, because even though I was taking anything I felt like, I didn't feel like taking Shakespeare. I met him because he was directing a play. He was directing Antony and Cleopatra in the black box at the college. The best thing about James Madison University back in those days is that students ran the black box theater. And if you submit a proposal, and the student-run organization could accept it. And Ralph Allen Cohen was an English professor who applied to direct his first solo play, which was Antony and Cleopatra. And he cast me when I was a sophomore. And Ena Barbas is a great part. I didn't know how great the part was until all of the older theater kids were really pissed off that he cast me. But that's when I fell in love with Shakespeare. And it was through that process. And in part, our Anthony sucked. So I looked really good. Because Ena Barbas, all you have to do is kind of walk and chew gum and you're going to look good because the part is just so damn great. And it was through the course of getting to know Ralph Allen Cohen, us working on a few plays. I directed Romeo and Juliet for my senior honors thesis because I couldn't get the rights to direct Les Liaisons Dangereuses that I saw in London when I was studying in London. I milked my parents 4 years. They said only 4 years, but I got 2 majors, a teaching certificate, and a semester in London, all in 4 years. And through the course of directing Romeo and Juliet, he was my text coach. I cast his high school age daughter as Juliet. She beat out the college women. And then he directed a seminar on Henry V in my senior year, where I played the shortest Henry V ever to conquer the French. And that's when I came up with the idea, hey, Ralph, we should start a professional company. So I was not even a professional actor yet. I mean, I suppose I did get paid summer stock. I did do summer stock in a couple of summers. So I guess technically I was a professional actor before I started my own Shakespeare company. But that was my path through. And part of what led me to say yes to my high school friends to audition for the senior class play was that one of the most popular shows on TV at the time was Family Ties. And I really liked Michael J. Fox. And I would watch that and say, I can do that. I can do that. If you watch Michael J. Fox, even before he had Parkinson's, he had problems with his hands. And I knew at the time I could act and not do all this shit with my hands. So that, let's see. Well, that was pretty much birth to becoming a professional actor. I think that covers the answer to that question.
You covered it. And I want to come back because I think that, you know, I mean, it's a lot of the impetus for us, and Jason, you kind of joked about it before when you said those who can't do produce, but what we do is create our own work in a lot of cases. And, you know, Jim, you were bold enough, and I'm thankful, Jason's thankful that you were, because what you did turned into opportunities for us down the road. And it takes a lot of chutzpah to say, I'm going to go out and in my first year of a professional career, I'm going to build a company that these, however many years later, how many years is it now?
39 this year.
39 years later is still running and is still inspiring other projects and is still doing great work that was inspired by your decisions when you were a kid, you know, and I think that's really incredible.
Here's we will get to this with all three of us, but my starting my company didn't have anything to do with, gosh, I wish somebody would give me work. They're not giving me work, so I'm going to create work on my own. A lot of theater makers end up doing that. I was even stupider than that, because it was, if you perform Shakespeare's plays under the kinds of conditions that he was writing for, you can create magic on stage that he baked into those plays that gets lost when you play with all the cool tricks we've invented in 400 years. So I was a zealot on a mission to show how great Shakespeare was. That's how stupid I was, or prescient. Fine line between clever and stupid.
But I do again, and I being, I mean, that's a level of inspiration to understand that something different and unique is there that's not being done the way it could be done, and you created an industry, you created a style, you created a way of growing American love for Shakespeare, which I'm not blowing smoke up your ass when I say I do not think the country would have the appreciation it has, current climate excluded, if your work hadn't happened. Like you have inspired high school kids across the country over the last 40 years who have gone on to make work in that style. And I think it's a really amazing and awesome thing. So for one, I'm glad
thank
that
you
had that passion out of the gate.
Thank you very much. We'll talk more about some of that when we get to the phase 2 of questions, because there's more to talk about. But we need to go from birth to being a professional actor for each of the two of you.
Sure. If it's okay, Jason, we can go chronologically, so I'll jump in next. I was born in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and I was a very bookish young person, but I never really knew much about theater. I enjoyed film. I love to read. I love to just kind of lose myself in and pretend. I was a big pretender. I spent a lot of time alone, and I would often spend that time imagining I was doing other things and going on adventures, and it was a big part of my creative brain, and I just always enjoyed it. When I went to high school, I also, Jim, did not go to high school a theater kid. I had done a couple of religious-based shows when I was in, I think like 4th, 5th grade. I started reading at church. I went to a Catholic grade school, so it was very much part of the culture that you'd be called on to read, and I was an avid reader, so they kind of said, maybe this guy can get up in front of people and talk a little bit. So I started reading, and then when we got to 8th grade, we did a passion play. And for whatever reason, the priest that directed the passion play had 4 readers who would stand at the back of the altar, and then all the other actors were acting out the actions that the readers were sharing, and kind of lip syncing the words, which I didn't quite understand, but it was the way he directed the show. So I was the voice of Jesus. And, I was still very much learning how to speak and had a very heavy Delco accent. So, my mom would mock me mercilessly when she heard me say some stuff.
What kind of accent?
Delaware County, Delco.
What does that sound like, Tom?
Have you seen Mayor of Easttown? Oh,
Okay.
Sometimes I have trouble getting back into it, but there's a lot of folks on Instagram that if you listen to them talking about their water and, the hoagies from the WA, like that kind of stuff, I can't even jump back into it anymore. I've been in Connecticut so long, my jaw's wired shut. But watch an Eagles game and listen to some of the folks shouting from the crowd, and you'll definitely hear it. But I loved it. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it never seemed like something I was going to pursue after that. It was just a fun church thing. And I went to high school on a scholarship that required a balance of academics and athletics, or at least extracurricular activities. So it was a prep school in Chester County. I hadn't really ever thought about going there, but when you were in 8th grade, the Catholic grade school sort of sent you around to take all these scholarship tests at different places, and I got a full scholarship to Malvern Prep. And again,
did you play freshman football?
I did play freshman football.
Damn.
Yeah. But I played freshman football for about a week because it was very early on in the season, and we were running Friday practice, which usually just meant shoulder pads and helmets and no lower pads. And we had just gotten started. I had done like the boot camp phase of everything, and I was going to play. I was also supposed to swim, and I was also supposed to play baseball that year. Like those were going to be my extracurriculars. And we were running wind sprints, and basically the way, for our listener who may not know, you run 10 yards, you turn, and you get ready to run back. And basically the players that are coming from the other direction are shooting the gap between you and the person standing next to you. So I'm shooting that gap, and I've always been a kind of heftier guy. And we had a gentleman on the team. I won't name him on the podcast because I don't want to shame him in any way, but he was a little bit on the stone side during practice. And
was his name Seamus?
It was not, but it would have been
Okay.
great if it was. And he didn't have his helmet on. And he kind of just, I guess, just stumbled directly in front of me. And I had a pretty good head of steam going. And one of the reasons I suck at athletics is that I just completely lack a killer instinct, and I didn't want to hurt this guy. So I tried to get out of his way, and I planted my foot, and the top half of my leg turned, and the bottom half didn't. So I didn't know what had happened. I limped. The trainer, I've never understood this about Malvern, but the trainer's office was probably a half mile to 3/4 of a mile away from the football field. So I limped my ass all the way back to the trainer. He said, "Oh, you probably just bruised your knee. Don't worry about it. Get back to practice." So I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, maybe it's a sprain." So I was basically on the sideline for the next, however many weeks of the season. And then as I started to feel better, I was like, let me see if I can get moving. So I asked my dad to go out in the alleyway with me, throw the ball around a little bit to see if I could move. I was a lineman, so it didn't really matter that much, but you would see if I could move a little bit. And he had me go out for a pass. I went out for the pass, and he threw the ball, and he watched me crumple to the ground because the top half of my leg literally slid off the bottom half of my leg. So all the ligaments in my knee were just destroyed. So suffice it to say, my athletic career, for what it may have ever been, was over. But
was Stoner Seamus a starter?
No. I don't.
Okay.
He might have quit the team for all I know. Don't even really remember. But and we had a great team. The team played well. We were in a weird little preparatory league in Pennsylvania, so it wasn't like there was state champions or anything like that. But the team went on to do well. But I was done, and I was in an immobilizer for 6 months, and I had to basically say, all right, well, how do I maintain this scholarship? What's the next step? And my mom was with me, and she said, well, what about going out for the school play? And my first instinct was like, there's no way I'm going out for the school play. It's not cool. Like, I was never cool to start with, but I'm like, I'm already in the social nadir. I'm not going to completely kill myself with this. And I just didn't know what I was talking about.
So you saw the theater people as socially down the ladder?
I didn't even really know the theater people. Like, there had only been one. I didn't know what theater people were. I had never known theater people, but but I just thought the idea of going and acting was, I don't know. I was really naive and stupid. And I mean, God knows my attitude changed so fast when it actually happened for me. But I went to an all-boys prep school, and the school play was the only activity that interfaced with the girls' prep school down the road. So suddenly I was like, oh, this is interesting. I want to explore this a little bit. And I was cast as a territory folk in Oklahoma. And it was probably one of the greatest single experiences of my life. I mean, you mentioned catching the bug, and I don't think, people that are listening to this probably know the bug, they understand the bug. But if you're not someone that has acted, there is a transformational experience that comes from joining an ensemble of people to drive towards a common goal of an excellent performance, which is greeted with an audience that is receptive, who then rewards you by immediately clapping for your work. There's something so dynamic in that most people don't understand. And when you have that feeling, it does change everything. It's like whatever you thought you were doing, there's a sharp turn. And it's kind of like Jason taking a 180 on podcasts. But for me, just being around all those people and the humor, which was great, because I was kind of a smart ass. Let's be honest. I got a lot of bullying done when I was younger, and then I decided to become a smart ass to get myself out of getting bullied, because I figured if I could make people laugh, they wouldn't hurt me, and it worked for those years. But now all of a sudden that became a valued commodity instead of just a defense mechanism, and people were saying, "Come be part of this group. You're fun. We want to do this." So I did Oklahoma, and it was amazing. I couldn't wait to get back out there. So I went when I got back. That year, I went and did a summer stock program by my place called Upper Darby Summer Stage. So I was like, because I was so excited about the idea, and did some children's theater. Tina Fey directed me that summer, and Pippi Longstocking, which was pretty cool. And then went back to high school, and I'm like, I'm in this now. The theater is my life. Went and auditioned, and did not get cast in Life with Father. Apparently, I wasn't old enough to be the father, and I didn't look young enough to play any of the kids. So the director said to me, and he was a great guy. His name was Rich Roper. Inspired a lot of my life. And he said, "Do you want to be on the stage crew?" And I was kind of like, I don't know. I just fell in love with this part. You know, I don't know if I want to do that part. And he's like, it's still part of the family, and you'll love it. And he was right. So I did stage crew, and I learned a lot about that piece of the puzzle. And then, unfortunately, Rich had to take a hiatus, and I got cast to play Bert Bratt in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And now, finally, I was like, you know, in the spotlight for a big, goofy number, and taking that all the way down to playing Max Bialystock eventually. Like, I just, there's nothing like that. And I knew I wasn't necessarily like a deep methody actor, but I could make people laugh their asses off, and I couldn't wait for that opportunity again. So did that, did shows all through high school, ended up playing Jesus again as my final role in high school. I was Stephen in Godspell, which is the Jesus character. That was awesome. And then it came time to go to school, and Rich Roper, who was my director, but also my guidance counselor, said, "You're not planning to go anywhere for acting, are you?" And I was like, "Not anymore." No, but he's like, "Look, I think you could do a really good job, but it's hard. It's hard, and you're going to struggle to make a living. You're going to have a hard time finding work. You know, you got to have something else." And he kind of got in my head, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll be pre-med," and all this other stuff was going around in my head. And then I was like, I don't want to go pre-med. I love literature. I love writing. I love reading. I didn't have a lot of exposure to Shakespeare, but a little bit. Like, I want to get more of all this. So I decided to go to school for English, which led me to Alfred University, which is where I went to college. Alfred is a very tiny little liberal arts school up in upstate New York. Not much around it other than it's a state school. And then across the street is the university. I was blessed enough to get a National Merit Scholarship to go there. And Jim, much like you, I did not want to put any financial burden on my family to go to college. So I could have stayed local to Philly and gone to Penn or something, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of this. It's a full scholarship, room and board, going to Alfred. And Alfred was so fun because, so I went there again. I'm doing English. Theater's not going to be a part of my curriculum. But they reached out to me. They're like, "Hey, we heard that you did theater at high school. We have a scholarship, an additional scholarship. That's an acting scholarship. Do you want to come audition for the acting scholarship?" And I was like, "Sure." So then I met all the theater professors and got to meet a couple of the other actors. I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute. Can I double major in theater and English?" And they're like, "Yeah, absolutely." So next thing you know, I'm a theater major as well. I was lucky enough that I'd taken a bunch of AP classes in high school. So my curriculum in college was kind of more open to do anything that I wanted to do, which was awesome. And I took acting. I got to play 15 to 20 amazing roles in college. My final role in college was Macbeth. And there was something that I think some of us may have in us, Jim, that you see when we first come to you, which is a innate ability to communicate the language and know what you're talking about, which not everybody has when they do Shakespeare. We've all seen that the hard way. I just fell into Macbeth it felt very natural. I mean, obviously not the activities, but the words and and the struggles and because Hamlet, I've always felt a little bit of distance from Hamlet, but Macbeth, like, he's just sitting there being like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing right now. I might have made a mistake. Did I make a mistake? Am I being haunted? I don't know. Like, there's just so much cool stuff in there. And I was also blessed in college with an amazing Shakespeare professor who had we would read the plays out loud in class. So it was me and a bunch of my actor friends who were in that English class getting to perform almost the whole canon during the day and then going and doing all these other shows at night. So I came out of all of that. Now, the one thing Alfred didn't have at the time, this is where you come into the story, Jim, was a real sort of like career planning element to the theater major. It was a liberal arts school. It was not a conservatory. They kind of wanted you to really focus on doing weird avant stuff. Like, I did Ubuwa, and then I did Table Manners, and then I did the Bacchae, so we were like kind of all over the place with content. But they didn't have like here's how you get a headshot, here's what your resume should look like, here's how you audition piece of the program. So I started asking them, what should we do? Like I did some research, and there were the ERDAs and the ECTCs and the NETCs, all these regional theater conferences, the Straw Hats, where you could go and audition for a bunch of people at the same time. So I wanted to do that. And I think I may have shared this story once before on one of the podcasts, but I decided to go to the NETCs, which were in Boston. And I was in a show at the time. I was also in my, I think I was probably rehearsing for the Country Wife at the time and playing Pinch Wife.
NETC stands for New England Theater Conference.
Yes. Shout out. I don't think, do they exist anymore, Jim? I don't even know.
They do not. They do not exist anymore.
Sure.
You killed them, Tom.
I did. I ruined them for everyone. So I was rehearsing for the Country Wife. I was taking 20 credits that semester, and I was exhausted all the time, and I couldn't really get a lot of clear coaching to say what I should do at the festival. I had done.
If you are a young person going to college, taking 20 credits in a semester is stupid. You should only do that under great duress. It is hard to be good in any class when you are taking that many hours. Okay, time in.
I had done. I had performed at ACTF the previous year and done a monologue from I Hate Hamlet, which I loved. It's an amazing show, and I did the Barrymore character. And I was going to do that for the audition, and then I was going to
ACTF stands for the American College Theater Festival.
Can't you just like subtitle under this on the video? Footnotes. So the Kennedy Center sponsors that nationally, and there's an award called Irene Ryan, so I was competing for an Irene Ryan award. So I was going to do
Kennedy
that
Center does arts.
Irene Ryan was the lady who played the grandma on the Beverly Hillbillies.
This is good, Jason. I can just have you kind of subtitle me throughout the rest. So anyway, long story short, went to go to do the audition. The piece that I was going to do was just way too long. The I Hate Hamlet monologue I couldn't cut down into a good chunk. Plus, my professor that had directed me in Macbeth said you should do some Shakespeare because you're good at it, and there's people that are going to be there that need Shakespearean actors that they're not going to see otherwise. But I also had this big musical theater bug going. I still do. It's like the bulk of my music collection is musicals. So in my head, Broadway was where I was headed. So I'm like, well, I want to make sure I sing too. And that was fine. It was interesting. My theater professor and my voice professor were married, so it helped kind of create the audition material.
Broadway is a street in New York City.
That is also true. So the issue that crept up was I had a pretty solid monologue in play, and it was a Macbeth monologue, and then I had a song from Hunchback of Notre Dame, Out There, Jason, which I'm sure you would kill. I'd love to hear you sing that song. Kill in a positive way, I mean. But
I think the kids would say slay.
Slay it, definitely. The night before I left, I went and did the pieces for my teacher, and he said, have you thought about doing something comedic instead? And I'm like, this thing is tomorrow. Like, I have nothing for. He's like,
bad advice.
I really think you should do something comedic. I just think it's more up your alley. And if they ask you for something else, you have the Macbeth stuff.
That's good advice for you a month before.
Yes, not the day before. So I went down there and I tried to learn the launch monologue from Two Gentlemen of Verona. And it's tough because it's got a lot of props and a lot of other stuff. And I thought I was getting it in my head. And they let you choose whether you want to sing first or act first. So I went, there's two rooms. There's a room with act, and there's a room with act, sing, or sing, act, however you want to do it. And I'm like, I'm going to the sing, act room. So I sang my song, and I started off with the monologue, and I got 3 lines in and completely went up. So I started telling jokes, just doing stand-up while I was up there. And it was good enough that I got a begrudging round of applause at the end of it. And so I did sing first. I sang first and it went horribly, which is probably why I couldn't remember any of the monologue. Just wasn't feeling great. Didn't get a good song in. Went to the monologue. The monologue got 2 lines in and then had to stop. So next thing you know, I'm just improving. They gave me a mild round of applause. I left, and I was like, I'm done. I might as well go home. I did get a call back for like Missoula Children's Theater or something, and I was like, at least they had some pity on me. But I was kind of like, well, this was a wasted trip. I don't think that they're going to want me really. And then I happened to be walking out of the building, and I walked past the room where the Shenandoah Shakespeare Express was auditioning. And Jim had a policy at the time that if you stuck around and he had time, he would squeeze you in. So I left my resume and I waited, and brought me in, and I did the launch monologue, right? And then I'll never forget it. He said, "Can you do it like Thurston Howell from Gilligan's Island now?" And I did that. And I actually felt more comfortable doing the monologue after he coached me. And I was like, I started to feel that connection, and I knew where things were going. So I left. I was like, thank God someone saw me do something decent today. And I ended up getting outreach from Jim later on, and he invited me to come back in and read for the Tough Love tour of 1998, which was Romeo and Juliet and Taming of the Shrew. And the cool thing back then, which I know he doesn't do anymore, but I still loved, was you were cast agnostic to your roles. Basically, it was like, do you want to be in the shows or not? And then you were told what you were going to play, which I actually loved, and I was just so excited to have the opportunity. It was kind of early internet days, so I couldn't even do research beyond like looking in magazines and stuff to see what the SSE was all about. But Jim was my first professional director. I moved to Harrisonburg, Virginia, and went and had the most intensive boot camp on Shakespeare anyone could have and everyone should have. And, I was working down there from July through the end of that year of 98. And the beauty of it is that I took so much away from that experience. On our last session, you guys saw how we handle text, how we work in rehearsal. All of that stuff builds such a unique and strong foundation that most Shakespearean actors never get. So I was able to parlay that into probably the next 3 or 4 years of my career. I got to play all these great Shakespearean roles because I had that experience and I was growing from that experience. And then this leads us up to about 2001, early September, and I got cast in an off-Broadway show where I was playing one of a pair of Siamese twin brothers. That's a story for another time. Went under contract with that show. It was called Reflections, and was doing it with my best friend. It was kind of like this perfect, just cascade of events. Best friend, they were going to give me my equity contract. We were going to move from the Lambs Theater to the Cherry Lane Theater, the Cherry Lane Theater up to the Lambs Theater for an off-Broadway run, and 9/11 happened. And as everyone who had anything to do with theater around that time knows, there was people didn't know if Broadway and New York theater would bounce back for years. Things got back on track pretty quickly, but I got snagged in some contractual issues with that show. Couldn't do anything else. So it sort of pushed things back a little bit. Eventually I freed up from that, kept auditioning, kept working every chance I got, did a lot of other fun shows. And that takes us up to about 2005 when I moved to Long Island. Now, for those of you that don't know, Long Island also has theater. I was not aware of this. Because in my brain, I'm so stupid. Like, you guys can see how narrow my focus was through the years. Didn't know what acting was, thought acting was weird. Did it, loved it. Didn't know that people would go from Long Island to other theaters in Long Island rather than just going into New York City to see theater. But found out there was a whole bunch of opportunities to act on Long Island. So I had moved out there and was doing a lot of work on Long Island. And I will jump into the production side of that when we get to phase 2 for me. So let's pause me in 2007-ish and go over to Jason.
Two comments before we go to Jason. One, the reason that I decided to see you at that first audition was because you didn't put freshman football on your resume. Okay, so let's be clear about that. And the other thing is if people are watching this and either they know something about the past of my company or they don't. Oh shit! What did I just do?
You're still here. We can hear you.
Okay, great. I would name our tours. I would name our with my old company, I would name our tours like a rock band would name a tour. And some of that was for merchandising purposes. Here is a shirt that I dug out that says Shenandoah Shakespeare Express on it. Has a little SSE tattoo on Shakespeare with an acoustic guitar. On the back, Shakespeare Unplugged.
Nice.
For over a decade. There were 2 tours in 1998. One here at the bottom, not the very bottom, was the 1998 Tough Love Tour. And it was the 10th anniversary Tough Love Tour that Tom was on. So there you go, Tom.
That's pretty wild that you had that shirt, man. I had that one for a long time. It finally just disintegrated off my body one day.
Mr. Young, from birth to becoming a professional actor.
Yeah, I was born in the southern coal fields of West Virginia to a mother who was a nurse who eventually became a nursing professor, and a father who was a coal miner who eventually became a part of the Mine Safety and Health Administration. I was an athlete growing up. There was a part of my life when I would play 3 sports every year. I would play football in the fall and basketball in the winter and baseball in the spring. And then as I got older and went from 3 sports, I eventually let go of baseball and was just a football basketball guy. And then I eventually let go of football and was just a basketball guy. I did not. Now, when I was in elementary school, I had 2 tremendous women in my life who were choir directors. I was in 2 really, really great choirs. One was my school choir.
Hold a second on choir. Back to football for a second. So you were a starter for freshman football, weren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Just check it. Just 2 guys making freshman football that I'm partnering with. Fuck you both. Back to choir.
Yeah. So prior to freshman football, I was in elementary school, and there was a woman named Jean Kuhn. Jean Kuhn was old when I was in elementary school. She's still alive, but seems to have not aged in the 30 years since elementary school for me. She was a lovely woman, and she was my elementary school choir teacher. And then there was a really high level sort of youth community choir in my community called Chanticleer, the Chanticleer Children's Chorus. And I was a part of that. And that was the foundations of performance for me, and the foundations for a love of music. And specifically, I went on to join the band in middle school, and I was a percussionist, and so the love of rhythm and harmony and meter and all the meatiness of music. And then in high school, I didn't do any performance. I wasn't in a choir, I wasn't in a band. I just was an athlete in high school until my senior year, when a girl that I was trying to get to go on a date with me told me that she would go out with me if I came to audition for the all-school musical. And the all-school musical was Grease. And I went and I auditioned, and I got cast as Roger, and Roger has a pretty small part in the movie, but in the musical, it's a nice part. One of the Burger Palace boys, that's what they call it in the musical, but it's the T-Birds, and he's the guy that sings the song Mooning. So he's one of the really comedic Burger Palace boys. I got that part. The girl that I was trying to get to go on a date with me was in the ensemble. She got mad that I got a better part than her, and we never got to go on that date.
When you sang the song Mooning, did you get to drop your drawers?
I did. Yep.
And
I did.
that didn't get the woman to want to go out with you after seeing your butt?
Well, the problem was at that point she had to get in line. You know what I mean? Like,
Gotcha. Thank you. The audience thanks you. Thank you.
yeah. And so I was also heavily involved in my church when I was in high school. Not as a youth group kid like Jim, but in the choir. I was like the 16 and 17-year-old that was standing next to like 70-year-old guys, going, no, this is the note. We're trying to sing this note right now, you know. And at one point I thought that I wanted to be a church musician, that's what I wanted my career to be. But interestingly enough, I was not a good enough musician to go to college and major in church music. I couldn't play piano, and my ear training was really weak at the colleges that I auditioned for. So I ended up going to a local school here, local to me, called Fairmont State University, which is in Fairmont, West Virginia. I had incredible teachers at Fairmont State. I was a musical theater kid when I got there, and remained that way through most of my time at Fairmont State. The first time I ever did Shakespeare was when I qualified for the Irene Ryan competition. And one of the scenes that I put together was the Angelo Isabella scene from Measure for Measure. Paired that with a song from I Love Your Perfect Now Change. And then it was while I was in college, I auditioned for a professional company in Morgantown, West Virginia, that's called West Virginia Public Theater, which is loosely tied to the university, WVU. And I got cast to play. I've done a lot of work for them, and I'm trying to think of the first show I did with them. And I think it was while I was in college. So I got cast to play the ghost of Christmas Present in their holiday production of A Christmas Carol, and they were doing the Madison Square Garden version of A Christmas Carol, which was eventually turned into a movie with Kelsey Grammer and Jesse L. Martin and those guys. But in the Madison Square Garden version, the guy who played the Ghost of Christmas Present was, I don't know if you've ever heard of this fellow, his name's Ben Vereen. And then they cast me to do it.
He was from Webster.
Right. They cast me to do it in West Virginia, and I was like, guys, I'm the furthest thing from Ben Vereen on the planet, maybe. So it was a role he originated that was kind of created for and with him. Jesse L. Martin did it in the movie, but that was my first professional experience. Was people do summer stock. That was, I guess, considered holiday stock, which is where you have like 4.5 rehearsals, and then you drop into tech, and then suddenly there's 700 children. And you're going, man, I don't even remember 2 days ago what happened. Yeah. So that's how I got from birth to stardom, Jim.
I feel like I took up way too much time. You're younger though, to be fair. You're closer to birth than I am.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, now I was lucky enough to have public theater right there in my backyard, and so I got to do a lot of stuff with them. I got to be in Happy Days the musical. I got to be. I was in another holiday run. We did because holidays were always like, what show could we bring 7 billion students to come see? On a bus. And we did Aladdin one year, and I played Jafar in Disney's Aladdin. And I want to say we did like 60 performances of that thing in 2 weeks or so. Like, it was like, I have a story where I vividly remember, and we were not an AEA house, right? So I vividly remember like 3 show days, because we had like our
AEA stands for Actors Equity Association, the
Right.
union for professional actors and stage managers.
And they would never let you do 3 shows in a day. But we were doing like school performances that were like an hour long for these like elementary kids. And then there was like a public performance that was a little longer. And I have this vivid memory of being in like the middle show of a 3-show day and sitting down backstage because I had a little bit of time off, falling asleep, and then waking up standing in the wings getting ready to enter, and like not knowing how I got from point A to point B. You know, I remember how exhausting that contract was, but that was not my first. My first contract was when I was Ben Vereen's lookalike.
You weren't taking 20 hours of college credit at the time, were you?
No. What was interesting about the difference between Tom's college experience and my college experience is even if I had 20 hours on my schedule, I wasn't taking 20 hours of anything in college. I was a really bad student.
Just to level set here, 2 of those credits were honors courses, and those honors courses consisted of such things as my wife mocked me for just the other day: cuisine as a cultural metaphor. So, I mean, just to put it out there, you know, I mean, those 2 extra credits weren't exactly crushing anyone's soul. You know what I mean?
Can you give us an example from that class?
So we would read a book that had a major meal in it and then recreate that meal. So we read like the Satyricon, we read Plato's Symposium. I'd have to go back and check some of the others, but every one of those books, like the Satyricon, has this huge Roman style feast in it. So we each had to cook something that was represented at that Roman feast. It was pretty neat.
Did you cook anything in that class that you still eat today the way you cooked it in that class?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it was, yeah. I mean,
cereal doesn't count.
One of the things I made was a phyllo and pear tart with caramel sauce. That was quite delicious. I would eat that again.
Would eat that, but do you make that? That's the question.
I don't really make anything regularly. You know, I'm kind of a microwave guy these days. But my friends in college used to love it because during that class, I learned how to make French bread from scratch. So like that was like our late night snack was, yo, Tom, go throw 4 loaves of French bread in the oven, and we'll get a vat of country crock butter, and we'll all just go to town. So we weren't averse.
I hope that your experience as Jesus let you turn those loaves into, you know, far more than you thought.
I definitely knew how to break them and hand them out and sing Baruch Atah and I am the I call them. I was like,
I like how you white trash it up a little bit too. Like I make French bread from scratch, and then we get country crock.
Phase 2 of our 3-phase discussion here. Phase 2 is what happened after acting professionally put you on your producer path. So Jason, going back to you, where we left off with Christmas Carol, how did you get from there to being a producer?
I got frustrated that I was working at this professional company called West Virginia Public Theater, and the majority of people working at West Virginia Public Theater were not West Virginians. And so I set out to try and correct that. And I thought that one of the major reasons that this was not happening is because that the students in West Virginia were not getting a high enough quality education to be able to be competitive at college auditions, to be able to get into good schools, to get good training, to get good professional work. There was a lack of quality theatrical education, performance education happening, in my opinion. And so I opened a company called the Vintage Theater Company, and it started out as a company that I just wanted to train people who wanted to be better, who wanted training beyond what they were getting in their high school theater classes. And then we started producing shows for those students. And then from there, VTC birthed a couple of performance troupes. And one of them, and everything that happened at VTC sort of happened out of necessity in a lot of ways, because we had a guy who wanted to teach improv classes, like adult improv classes. So we started doing that, and then I was in a meeting with him, how your class is going? It's going, oh, we're having, I think it'd be cool if we got to perform a little bit. I've always wanted to do, and I said, great, let's do some improv. And then suddenly this improv group was born called the Fearless Fools, and they've been around doing improv all over Appalachia for 15 or more years now. And then the same thing happened with the Rusty Mechanicals, the Shakespeare troupe. They were born out of my best friend from undergrad did his graduate work in the UK and spent a semester at the Globe, came home and said, man, it really sucks that we don't have any Shakespeare in West Virginia. And I said, well, we do now. And then the mechanicals were born that way. And the biggest thing was going from an actor who wished that there were more opportunities for actors that lived near me to work beside me. Then I became the guy creating those opportunities for all those actors that were living and training near me. And I thought that by opening my own theater company, I would get to do a lot more performing. And I actually did less for a really long time because I was worried about running a business, and did a lot of directing, and did a lot of everything out of necessity. And it wasn't until I met you, Jim, and you came on board with the mechanicals 7 years ago that I got to go back to like regular, I was full-time, regular performance, because I had somebody else who could really direct the shows so that I could step back on the stage. Because one of the things we discovered is I'm not very good at directing myself.
Who is? It's so hard, I mean, you can never, even when you can watch your own dailies in film, I still don't think you can do a good job of critiquing yourself, for sure.
Well, I love most everything I do, so it's hard to give myself notes,
Oh, we all feel that way, Jason. So,
So yeah, I feel like I went from player to producer out of necessity, and so much of that has happened in my professional life. There was something that I wanted to happen where I was that wasn't happening, and instead of moving to where that thing was happening, I wanted to build the thing where I was. And so that's where it all came from.
And at some point in there, between it was after Tom was touring in my old company, you saw my old company when you were still a student.
Yeah, I was in college and I was sort of an anti-Shakespeare guy. I was a big musical theater guy. You got to understand something, Jim. When I was in college, I knew everything. It was pretty amazing. I really was dumbfounded that I even had to be there.
And somehow he knows even more now.
More now.
Amazing thing.
and less about some things, though. But I was really, you were talking about being a zealot earlier. I was like a zealot about musical theater, and anything that wasn't musical theater, we used to call them straight plays. Remember that terrible name? But anything that wasn't,
I hope that term has died a horrible death.
And honestly, the reason that I just couldn't get on board with Shakespeare or any of the classics, I guess, was I had just seen bad Shakespeare, and so I developed that. Ralph calls it Shakespeare, right? And it just didn't see. But it's the same thing about absurdist theater. I'd seen some really bad absurdist theater, and I don't care if I ever see Pinter or anything like that again.
Forgive me. Quick sidebar. Have you guys heard about this Jamie Lloyd production of Waiting for Godot that's in the city right now?
With Bill and Ted?
With Bill and Ted, yes. He literally said the other day, it's theater, it's cerebral theater. So basically, we already know Jamie Lloyd has removed costuming, lighting, and scenery from all of his shows by now. Now he's removed blocking as well. It's two actors standing in a giant circle reciting Waiting for Godot back and forth to each other.
Yeah, it looks,
right.
And that set looks like the end of the James Bond movie credits.
Yes.
It looks like the bullet thing.
But you can witness that feast for a mere $300. And that's before the scalpers.
But still, mad shout out to Jamie Lloyd. If you want to support the AGC, we're all about it, Jamie. You can do any show you want.
So you saw bad Shakespeare. You saw
Shakespeare.
Tom acting in my old company?
No. I never. It was the ASC by the time I saw your company, not the SSC. So the school brought him in. And they brought him in they were there for a week. They were teaching workshops. They were performing during the daytime for schools that got bussed in, and they were performing in the evening for the public and for the theater students. And as a theater major, we got the whole week off. We got to spend the whole week out of all other classes. You know, it was optional to go to other classes, which I always thought college was optional. And then we spent the whole week with the ASC, and it was life-changing. It was the doing it with the lights on, the audience interaction, the clarity of the language, the sort of like, see, I don't mean this disrespectful, but the almost like irreverence for it, the fact that it was like, you know, like as opposed to like, oh, it's Shakespeare. It seemed like it was like, yeah, it's fucking Shakespeare, you know, like
Yeah.
that level of cockiness, I guess, is what it felt like at times. It was awesome, just totally awesome. And then I remember sitting out there going, yeah, I think if I got to do it like this, I could do that. This and multiple years, the ASC came through when I was in school there, and I saw Cyrano de Bergerac, I saw A Midsummer Night's Dream, I saw Julius Caesar, I saw The Merchant of Venice, I saw Return to Forbidden Planet. Oh God, I saw Much Ado About Nothing, a phenomenal Much Ado About Nothing. I saw Taming of the Shrew.
So you had those experiences open at least one eye and one ear toward Shakespeare before your buddy came back from London.
Oh, yeah.
So those kind of things kind of mixed and merged to help you decide to start a company.
Yeah, and the person that I didn't found it with Jeremy. Jeremy's the buddy I'm referring to. Shout out to Jeremy Crawford. I like to mention him as much as possible. He is in the final season of The Witcher coming up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do the specific name drop.
Yarpen. He plays Yarpen something in The Witcher.
And if we don't know the names, Yarpen is the what character?
He's the leader of the dwarves, the like mining dwarf. He's got a hammer and a long red beard. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, but he actually isn't the guy that I founded the company with, because he ended up going back to the UK, and then I think he landed. He's in Canada now. I don't know if there were stops in between, but I founded it with another undergrad friend who had gone to Mary Baldwin and gotten the degrees that were created at Mary Baldwin when the American Shakespeare Center moved to Stanton. And so we were attempting some of the stuff that they had experienced at Mary Baldwin and seen at the ASC. But I got to tell you, man, like once we started learning from the guy who helped create the style, it got a lot easier. You know, it's like, you know how on Cobra Kai, the kids would have been a lot better fighters if Miyagi was there to train them, and it wasn't like coming through Danielson like that. That's sort of how it worked for us.
No, it's true, Jason. And that kind of plays back into my side of things, because when you learn how to do everything that way, and you learn it, you know, with Jim Miyagi here, you know, you're able to take that forward and people notice it. And for me, what kind of happened in the years after was I was really blessed to do a ton of Shakespeare right after my SSE tour. And, you know, actors would actually come and ask me questions, you know, like, hey, you really seem to know what this scene's about. I also, my fight experience at SSE and the workshops I taught in fight enabled me to be able to be fight choreographers for a lot of those shows later on too. So people look to me kind of like a partial director anyway. So what started to happen over time was, you know, people kind of pull me aside. If we could jump back to the mid 2000s, the mid aughts, if you will, I moved to Long Island and I got an office job, which I'm still doing today, and has given me a lot of the business skill I'm trying to bring to the AGC. But throughout that entire time, I was also acting and acting primarily at night. And I had a production of, I met my beautiful wife in a production of Romeo and Juliet at the Vanderbilt Mansion that was directed by a gentleman named Frederick Orpheus DeFay, who was from Brooklyn, yet spoke with a British accent. Fred was a true character. He was well into his late 80s. pencil thin mustache, Errol Flynn style, shoulder length gray hair. Always had, no matter what time of year it was, he always had a turtleneck sweater on. He was very special. But later in life, he had produced some of these shows so many times that just didn't really have a lot of appetite for it. So actors would be kind of hungry for direction, and they'd say, "Tom, will you work through this with me?" And I hadn't really thought about directing, but I started to realize how much I enjoyed helping other actors find stuff, and that was really exciting for me. So around 2007 or so, I was in a weird production of a show called Spike Heels by Teresa Rebeck. It's a 4-person show. We were in a small theater that this guy was producing, and he left the room, and all 4 of us were standing around being like, we have no idea what we're doing right now. We're totally lost. And the 2 of the actors were like, you know what? He's probably going to go sleep for a while. Would you mind if we ran the scene for you and you could kind of give us some pointers? And I'm like, okay. So I'm doing it.
Wait a minute. When I'm directing Jason, I can go off and take a nap?
Absolutely.
Okay. Got it.
So I started giving them some ideas.
Only if you wake me up first.
So foolishly enough, with my back to the door, this gentleman walks in behind me while I'm directing his scene. And he's like, he just waited. We ended rehearsal. He pulled me aside afterwards and he's like, "So you fancy yourself a director, do you?" And I was like, "I don't fancy myself anything." And he was like, "Well, we'll see about that." I'm like, "What does that mean?" Comes back to me 2 days later. He's like, "Do you want to direct The Pillow Man in our second stage theater?" And I was like, "Sure." And that's such a unique and fun show. And I really because I like to, as much as I'm faithful to our style, which I think can come out in any show, when you do get to do fun stuff with multimedia and things like that, it brings another element to the show altogether. So, depending on where you're producing and how you're producing, it opens up other windows. But you can always come back to the fact that people need to know what they're saying, how they're delivering it, and interface with the audience, because that's really at the key of all of that. So did that show, started directing more shows. Around 2008, with the same company, I did another production of Romeo and Juliet, and the gentleman who played Tybalt was a playwright. And he had written a new musical called Father of Songs. His name's Tom Slott. So Tom invited my wife and I to come to New York City and be in a staged reading of this show. And out of that show experience came, hey, Tom's got this whole cycle of plays that he'd really like to produce. So we decided to form a production company in New York City called Original Binding Productions. And we spent probably the next 5 or so years putting up 20 or 25 shows in the city in all the weirdest venues you could possibly think of. We were above Show World one time, which was like a peep show place that we were on the second floor. A fair amount of people have done shows up there if you actually press them and ask them. Worked at a bunch of Hudson Guild Theater, a bunch of different off Broadway places in the city, and we had a good run for a while. Eventually it got a little too cost prohibitive, and the crazy thing about doing shows at festivals, especially in the city, is that you have to be very lightweight. You can't have a lot of sets, a lot of props, a lot of stuff, which was good because I knew how to do that already, right? I knew how to bring the theater, the imagination side into all of it because of my work with Jim. So did that for a while. And then
did you do any binding of books during this time?
only virtually.
Okay.
Yes, I did them in a basement of an old bookstore in a glass room that I eventually became a serial killer and started storing people in there. Wait, that's you. That's a whole different. Have you seen that show? You've watched it.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes.
So all that was going on, and then I, eventually the ironic part of all of this was while I was doing all this production, I eventually got cast in Connecticut Free Shakespeare. This was 2012 when I first came to Stratford, which is where all this began, right? I came to Stratford to perform in Romeo and Juliet yet again, as the only Paris that has ever survived, and did Paris. Yeah, no, it's crazy, isn't it? It's a unique perspective on the play when you're there at the end, I have to say. It does change things a bit. So did that here in Stratford, and then I got my equity card doing that and started doing a few more shows locally on Long Island, and then eventually moved over here. When this opportunity came up, when the fire happened at the old American Shakespeare Festival Theater, I sort of was with a conglomerate of people that wanted to put on a major arts festival and had never done something on that scale before. The only person who worked with us that did was Sib Law. Sib had done a festival at the Shakespeare Theater years before, but we wanted this to be a really big splash. And, you know, I ended up curating this event that was, you know, had 40 acts in it. You know, we had a ton of vendors. It was a lot of details to work out. And I was like, wait a minute, this is all my art stuff and all my business stuff slamming into each other. And then when I saw that there was the potential to build something way bigger and better on that site in Stratford, and I reached out to Jim, and Jim offered me a plethora of research that he had done to build the Globe in Virginia. And my Excel brain turned on when I saw all that. And I'm like, you know, lots of times when you're a working actor or working artist of any kind, you spend time going, nothing's going the way I want it to go. Why is this not working out? Why am I not famous? Why am I not making more money? Why is it not easier to book my shows? You know, all that stuff. But now I can look back on all of that and see that it was all leading to this. It was all leading to our creating this. And if I hadn't spent 20 years working a bullshit marketing job, I wouldn't know how to do a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do now, like build a business pro forma or create a complete business plan or just have meetings with people. Like it's not always the easiest thing to do. And I do applaud all three of us for being able to get in a room with anybody and talk through this project. But that piece comes from the acting, right? It all feeds itself. It's a beautiful circle where the art feeds the business, feeds the art, feeds the business. And I think that's why the three of us are such a great team to move this forward, because, you know, you guys really hit the ground running, and you had formative reasons to go out and build companies. You had passion, you had vision. Mine came a little bit later, but it came for this project. It came because you inspired me, Jim, then when I worked with you as an artist. And then after the fact, when I knew you wanted to build this thing, and then when I saw a place to put it. You know, and let's be honest, we've been bouncing around a lot over the last 5 years as we've been trying to figure this out. You know, we've had towns say to us, we love this, we want you here, and then bail out. We've had towns say, we don't want you here, when they should want us there. And we've had places where they really, really want us, and they're just trying to figure out how we can all make it happen together. But going from player to producer has allowed us to create this really unique synthesis, right? When you go into an environment, Jim, you're able to go into it with an actor's mindset and a producer's mindset. Same thing for you, Jason. And I think the fact that all three of us can do that, it makes us better at all of the disciplines. You know, like if somebody asked us to go man the snack bar, we would do it with all the vim and vigor that we would do to go play a lead role on stage, because we know what it feels like to do all of it. We've done it all. We've created it all. We've built sets. We've hung lights. We've talked to venue coordinators. We've played leading roles. We've sang. We've danced. We've cried. We've sighed. We've been through the whole gamut. And now what we want to do is gift that back to the theatrical world. And we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Sorry. I'm waxing poetic. I apologize.
No, that's pretty darn good. Jason, anything that you want to add that got you to where you are right now with the AGC?
Well, that's your fault.
Thank you.
No, I don't think so. I really relate to Tom's comment about, like, if we're asked to go run the snack bar, like there's something about when you open your own company and you know how when you're a kid, you don't value things as much because you didn't have to buy them. And then when you're adult, you go, oh, I value this a lot more because I had to buy it. I think running your own company makes you value everything that you do from there on out in a lot of ways. And so in my current role, which is, I never thought that I would be this much of an arts administrator, but I'm a program manager for a roadhouse in West Virginia. And sometimes I get to be in the concession stand. Sometimes I get to box office, and sometimes I get to bartend, and I find myself thinking, what's the best way to do this? Like, how do I do this the most cost effectively with the best customer experience and the best? And I think that just comes from you become so ingrained with trying to turn a dollar into, or make a dollar out of 50 cents and make it seem like you spent a whole bunch more on it. The other thing that I will say that I have found incredibly important, that I lean on more than anything else, is that from the moment that I opened VTC and became a producer it was 15 years ago. The first show we did was a 9/11 remembrance piece on the 10-year anniversary of 9/11. So in 2011. So what is that? It's like, 15 years ago. Is the network. Like, I have made friends and been a good friend and been there when people needed me so that I could have them there when I needed them, and finding people that were like-minded, and getting them and believing in their delusions so that they would believe in my delusions, and just trying to get to know everybody and investing. I never really understood what social capital was until I became a producer. I'd heard the word before. Also, you're the king of understanding. Tom, I'm talking to you. You're the king of understanding, like lingo, business lingo. Jim and I were at this economic development conference this past week, and the thing that I heard over and over was highest and best use. What is the highest and best use of this? What is the high? And I was like, oh, okay, that's some lingo, man. But I never truly understood social capital until I realized that sometimes I just got to invest my time in being present in something that I don't really, there's better uses of my time, but me being present and being helpful and being a part of something in the community or in this, and when I say community, I mean geographical, but also like communities of purpose, like Thespians and West Virginia Theater Association and stuff like that, like giving myself to that and then reaping the benefit of it on the backside. And that social capital and that networking is I think that's eventually how we're going to get this thing built, is just through the people that we know and that we have encountered in these 3 stories that we are telling.
Okay, so here's the exercise that I need you creative people who are actors. I need you to think. Imagine that you are not part of the AGC project. Okay, you know everything that you know about it, but you are not one of the team that is making this happen. What would you want? What?
I was taking off my AGC shirt.
I thought you were getting naked so that you could moon us maybe and sing something from Greece.
There was a nip slip.
Night of the Burning Pestle. Sorry. Finish your thought. Not a part of this team, but we know what we know.
That's okay. There's another shirt.
Nice. I love it.
I found a box. What would you want to ask the people that are trying to make this happen? What would you want to know about them in their journey from player to producer, or next steps with the American Globe Center? If you weren't a part of it, what would you want to hear from those 3 fuckers that are leading the charge?
It's a great question. I think one of the things that people are probably curious about is what is it about, like we hear a lot of things about why a Globe or why a Performing Arts Center and why both at the same time from our constituency. And I think that one thing I would like to be able to tell those folks is we're as theater kids, all of us, right? I mean, we might not have been at various points in our lives, but we are now. We want to create this optimal destination theater experience. And in order to do that at the level we want to do it at, and to make the financial model work, because I think people miss that point a lot of the time, we have to build big and build everything at the same time. This can't be a tent in a parking lot. And God bless the companies that do that. I mean, I think, when you look at Hudson Valley Shakes and what they've been able to accomplish, when you even look at the festival in Stratford, they started with a lot of money, let's be fair. But, for us, we want to make sure that our visiting audience, which includes people like us who love what we love, can come and just immerse themselves in really high quality work done in these beautiful, appropriate venues for a reasonable price. I think people don't know that, we're so passionate about this, but it's not just, hey, we're building a globe. We're building a globe where you can see Shakespeare the way we believe Shakespeare should be performed, the way it was performed, and pay $10 to do that. What we're trying to do is industry changing, it's life changing, and it's absolutely business changing. And Jim, one of the things that kind of got me super excited when we were starting on this was that you were already moving into that revolutionary mindset with your article, and just your thesis and all that stuff. You're ahead of the curve as a producer because you've been doing it for so long, and you see all of the things that can be better. And we're moving towards something better as a group. And that's something I'd want to understand as somebody outside of the project is what we're aiming for, the better.
Well, I think you said tons of stuff that would answer that question. Jason, anything come to your mind?
Mine was similar to what Tom said in a lot of ways. And Tom, Jim and I have spent a lot more time together than you and I have. It's not like we're strangers, but Jim and I, and one of the things that I think Jim finds utterly charming about me, and by utterly charming I mean quite annoying, is I have this tendency to walk into a building and go, how can I do a play in here? Or drive by a park and be like, oh, if I could get under that pavilion right there, I could do a play right there. And the new game I play is if Jim and I are ever in an automobile together and there's just any piece of land, I'll say, hey, we can build a globe right there.
Anybody's backyard.
Hey, I do the same thing. Jim, you lived here for a while. You know that little plot of gas, where the old gas station was next to the diner? I've actually literally gone there and walked across it to see if it's more than 110 feet, so we can fit a 90-foot building in the middle of it.
Right. That whole idea, first of all, that is the greatest example ever. That parking lot that used to be a gas station by the diner, that's just the most perfect description possible. But I have really, really leaned into something that I have heard Jim say multiple times on this project that I think I now believe and understand more fully now at this moment than ever before. And that is, the world doesn't need another theater, but the world needs the globe, and the world needs us to do what we do on that stage. And I think that if I could just explain that concept to somebody who was interested in this project, I think just explaining it through that prism would be all I would need to say. And that's not even talking about the annual economic impact and the jobs that are going to be created and the transformational impact it's going to have on education, but it's just the fact that there are theaters everywhere, but what we are talking about does not exist anywhere.
I want to piggyback on stuff that you two said to try to close us out here.
That's not
one
a
of
problem, Jim. You're small enough. I think both. Yeah, no problem.
I'd like one knee on one
yeah.
of your shoulders and one of the knees on the other. We'd do a cheer. One of the biggest reasons I believe the world doesn't need just another theater is because theater's dying. The theater is dying artistically and financially. The old models don't work. And current theaters cannot start over. They have not figured out, A, that there's a big enough problem they need to change. And it'd be really hard even if they did. Because we're building from scratch, we can start a different model. And the reality is theater as we know it will not be around in 10 years the way it is today. Theaters continue to die because nobody wants to go en masse to see movies on stage like they used to before the pandemic. Go ahead, Tom.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but this is really key. And I think it's even grown beyond the movies on stage to people assume the experience is going to be the same, so much so that the 17 new musicals that opened on Broadway this year did not recoup their investment. They didn't make any money. Now, a big part of that problem is how much money they're dumping into the shows, granted. But that's terrifying to me that, like, because what does that mean? We're just going to trot out Wicked and Hamilton and that's it, you know? So what you're talking about is so critical because we're seeing it happen. In 2020, everyone was like, oh, theater's going to shut down and people are never going to go back again. But people did go back. People came back out and got in those seats. But the model is so broken financially and artistically that people are literally throwing $40 million away. If each of those shows had given us $5 million, the American Globe Center would be standing right now.
Well, and the people that came back to see the Broadway stuff are the rich white people who could afford to pay hundreds of dollars for a ticket.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of huge production value and ticket price may not die. But who's going to do that in the regional theaters?
Right.
They cannot get that audience to pay those prices to keep that shit running. And what we're talking about is a revolution artistically and economically that makes more sense, takes better care of the people who are creating the work, and is just a whole different way of going about making theater of the imagination, the words, the stories, the center of the kind of community experience that people cannot get when they are sitting in the dark live, or more likely when they are sitting with their devices watching the streaming services, which is what they're choosing to do more than go see live theater, because live theater is not offering them anything to go to. And so this idea is too good artistically and economically for us to stop working our asses off until we're dead. That we've got to keep doing what we need to do to get enough dominoes to fall so that we can get to the place where we have planted our flag in a community and we are raising the money that needs to be raised to get the construction loan to build the theaters and open them all up at the same time so that we can be this destination theater experience that is going to be transformational to the town we're in, the region we're in, nationally, and fucking artistically, because we're doing something different that the world really needs.
Totally agree. I want to take advantage of this opportunity to share one thing with you guys. We we talked about this a little bit during our conversation with Peter McCurdy on one of our other podcasts. And
And who is Peter McCurdy? Who is Peter McCurdy, please?
Thank you. Jason, you're going to subtitle me there. But Peter McCurdy is the timber frame craftsman who oversaw the building of the 1599 Globe that currently stands in London.
Peter McCurdy is Old Man McCurdy's son.
Old Man McCurdy's son. And Peter is planning on helping us to build the 1614 Globe here. He actually came and did a couple of workshops and discussed the timber framing practice and how the Globe was built to some of our audiences in Hartford and Norwich recently, which was great. But one of the things we talked about when we were having our podcast with Peter is that there was, in fact, a Thomas Evans who was, his father, Henry Evans, was a shareholder in the Globe. He was actually a shareholder in the Blackfriars. And when the original Globe was built, Henry asked his son Thomas to step in and manage the business affairs for the family in relation to the Globe. Thomas was there until the fire. And after the fire, he decided not to stick around for the rebuilding of the 1614 Globe. I did some research, and I am, in fact, descended from that specific Thomas Evans, who did not get a chance to build the 1614 Globe because he decided to go back to Wales. I actually, my one of my uncles had done a family tree, and it went back to the generation after that, which is also a Thomas Evans. So there's Henry, Thomas, and then all I had to do was link this Thomas to this Thomas, and I was able to do that to find out that. So whatever my family karma is, this is my opportunity to build the Globe that my ancestor didn't get to build in 1614.
You are here to rewrite the wrong of your family.
I am.
That is a mission.
That's crazy, but I mean, it's happening. I mean, I think we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. We're only 400 pounds some years late, but we'll do it.
Awesome. Is there anything else either one of you want to say to bid farewell to our audience of so many that is watching us and listening to us on the podcast version of this?
I just like to say that
perhaps on the YouTubes.
On the YouTubes, we've seen folks come on these sessions with us in the past who have gone on from an experience with the American Shakespeare Center or the SSC to create their own companies or to direct shows or to teach. We continue, folks. If you think you can. Get out there, produce, make good work, create stuff that is in the vein of what we're trying to do, because the world needs us right now, very much so, right? And it's a hard time to do it, but if you can get out there and make beautiful art, please do.
Woohoo!
And if you can't make it, at least go support it.
Yes, thank you. Good call.
Yeah, and if you can't make well, I guess the theme is if you can't make it, produce it.
From players to producers.
Good night. Good night, everyone.
Good night, folks. We'll be here all the week.